They're gonna catch my checklist. That's a bad bet.
Welcome back to Never Fade, the NFT podcast. I'm your host, FaXx. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us at Never Fade NFT on Twitter. Subscribe to our YouTube. Appreciate all the feedback and comments. We've been bringing you takes from inside of Web3. We've hosted a number of builders in the space, NFT founders, artists. Definitely learned a lot myself during this experience. Hopefully you did too. And I'm joined today, as always, by the one and only Goodmonth ETH. What's cooking good? Good's eating snacks. He's eating snacks. He's not ready. I don't think he's ready for today. I don't think he's ready for what the NFT market is doing to us psychologically, spiritually. People are down bad. We saw max capitulation in the NFT space over the last week. I think what happened here is over leveraged, degenerate JPEG monkey traders got caught off guard with their hands in the cookie jar and they paid the price. And that's kind of the first topic that I wanted to talk about today. So good. You with us here, boy?
Look, dude, I had to load up on some trail mix for some fuel right now because I'm popping a Celsius, getting that energy drink going, and I need everything I can get because I got MFNTs. Boy, look at what happened. One into parenthesis WHAT.
Dude, for real. It's been a wild week. We saw NFT collections really take it on the chin. We saw Bored Ape Yacht Club dip below 30 Ethereum for the first time in a very long time. We saw Azuki, post this Las Vegas IRL party at Hakkasan, just absolutely slide with FUD and all kinds of emotions wrapped up. And we're gonna get to the Azuki Elemental saga. That's gonna be kind of, I think, the next thing that we really dive into here on today's show. But first, Good, I just want to get your sentiment in general on this kind of quote NFT crash. What happened? What's your mindset right now?
There are so many timelines that are woven into this moment in space and time right now that the only thing you can do is zoom out. Like, the only thing you can do is zoom out and look at every variable at play. The longest TL, like the longest baseline underneath us, is we're in a bear market. The second longest timeline that we're sitting on and operating on is blur.io and all their gamification that they rolled out designed for these degens. And then on top of that, we have other collections that are delivering, other collections that are not delivering. And I think that, what we experienced last week, frankly, I'm surprised that it took so long to approach that moment. These JPEGs were over leveraged for a long time, and blur farming for bidding and the cope for these blur farming rewards for bidding and then lending coming out. It was always a cocktail for just absolute train wrecks. And I think we just needed a catalyst. We needed a spark to light the fuse. And Azuki gave us that spark. EOD.
Yeah, you're right. Azuki kind of like lit the spark of this NFT capitulation that was kind of brewing for months. And I mean, we talked about this like during the FTX and during some of the other like macro crashes that, some of these quote blue chip NFT collections, they kind of like held their ground and it was a little bit surprising to some degree. And I think that we saw that unfold a bit. And, when we talk about like being over leveraged, in my mind, we're talking about like, for one example is these blend loans that are available, which, I've been tinkering with to understand more about them. And this blend lending product, it's tricky, right? Because I do like to use NFTs to collateralize and get capital and basically use that capital to trade other NFTs. It's kind of like a way to stay liquid, and get the most out of the NFTs that you're just kind of sitting there and holding. Of course, you can end up, losing your NFTs by doing that, but it's basically like a gamble that I like to take. And up to this point, mainly I've used NFT Fi, which is peer-to-peer lending. And a couple of things that I like about it is, like, one, like the terms are set. So like if you agree to a loan at a certain number of days and a certain interest rate, that's set for that time period.
Well, what you're talking about there, FaXx, is a loan. That's a loan. That's lending. That's what you like about it, is it's a typical loan. What you don't like is that Blur called something lending, but it's actually high freaking leverage. That's the truth.
Yeah, so so we also had this kind of experience with Ben DAO, and people would talk about how there'd be these Ben DAO liquidations, which is because, like, when the loan to value on the loans that are out on Ben DAO reach a certain level, it triggers these basically loans to go into auction, and this whole kind of cascade of things. And so it seems like what Blend did is kind of like take the worst, which is you people are being incentivized to give these loans. So what happens is, first, like, there'll be these like low loan to value loans available for like almost zero interest, or like 0.01% interest per day. So it seems like appetizing, like, oh wow, if I put 1 ETH down on this Azuki, I can get the Azuki and I only have to pay, 0.01%. But then what happens is, basically, the people who are incentivized to do the loan, they have to hold the loan for 24 hours, but then 24 hours later, they can call the loan. So they kind of like farm the points they get for the lending. Then the loan gets called, it goes into an auction. Then you get assigned, if somebody picks it up, you get assigned a higher interest rate loan. And then you got to kind of think like, okay, do I want to have that interest rate, or do I need to like pay back a little bit and refinance? So as somebody on the receiving end of these loans, it's like every day it's changing, and the interest rate gets worse. Obviously, when the market is crashing, it causes more of this kind of momentum to have to refinance and figure out what to do. But basically, this product, I think, needs some work. And my experience so far is that, it's only good for very short-term use, which I don't think is the nature of how like an NFT loan should work. And I think what happened here is, so many people got upside down on these loans that they had, really no choice but to let these NFTs, market sell, and this kind of like capitulation cascade unrolled, and it was pretty violent. So I guess my first question is, good, like, in general, what do you think about the concept of using NFTs as collateral to get trustless loans?
Yeah, it all depends on when you came into it, period. If you minted a monkey for $270 and you can take a $50,000 loan on that monkey in less than 2 years' time, brilliant. Do it. Like, do it. I can't, I don't know. You just have to look at individual situations. Now, if you came in on a monkey at $150K and you want to take a $40K loan as it's going down a little bit because you want to free up some cash because your asset's bleeding, then like maybe sell the thing. Like probably sell the thing and write off the loss. So I think it just depends on what your situation is. I do think that permissionless software and protocols is what the space is about. And I think that it is great that they're there. I don't think that they should be gamified for points. And I don't think that people should get their hope up that by using a certain tool, they're going to get rewarded in this like airdrop that mimics some type of airdrops we've seen in the past. I kind of have a fundamental belief that when you're doing permissionless things, if it's centralized in any way, they're going to take a rake. And so you're not getting the best deal. Like if it's centralized in any way, it's like you're using a protocol with a banker in the middle. And I don't necessarily believe in that. Now, I used BendDAO when ape staking came online at the end of last year. And the reason being is because it was just a no-brainer. Like 30 days of ape staking was going to yield over 3 to 4x what BendDAO was going to charge in interest rates. And there was some lucky arbitrage that happened in between there, between different asset prices that helped as well. So, but after those 30 days, like I was out of BendDAO. So BendDAO, I was very grateful for it because I didn't have to go find, a peer-to-peer lender and, get strapped to a time frame when I wanted to play that time frame out a little bit because I didn't exactly know like the price action of ape. So in that use case, BendDAO was super useful. I did just use Blur lending for the first time on this going, as the market was going down. I picked up a DGOD in January for, roughly 5.5 ETH. I was up at midnight, unfortunately, for some stupid reason, popped on Twitter. I heard Frank come on, announce the delay with a website. The website was cute, Frank. The website was cute. But in my opinion, like, you're putting time into a delay announcement that's cute. That makes me bearish. So I listed the thing for 10 ETH, and people were celebrating the delay. The thing for me, the real gut wrench for me was that tweet with that copy pasta that everyone was tweeting out, like celebrating the delay. I just was like, that's not what I'm here for. Like, the delay stuff was cute and kitsch, but at this point, just stop setting deadlines for yourself. Dead gods, D-gods should stand for dead deadlines. Just go out, have fun, drop things when they're ready, but I'm not down for this delay culture. Anyways, reason why I bring that up is I popped the lend on the D-God at like 8.6, and within a couple hours, I got an email saying, you need to pay off your loan. I look at the floor. The floor is like 7 ETH going to 6. And I'm like, okay, then I'm not going to pay it off. I have 8.6 dry powder sitting off of this thing. So I basically made like 2 ETH if I go and buy back in, but I didn't. So
waiting on this announcement too, kind of trying to figure out if DGods was going to delay or if they were going to make some, super bullish announcement. And, I did pop a DGod at 9.75 ETH as soon as I learned that it was in fact going to be a delay. Not that I don't think that it's going to come back, just because like the opportunity, risk of continuing to hold that when I could potentially use that, dry powder for something else in the meantime. And
well, it was a moment in time for me. Like it was a true moment in time for me. That's like, you own a DGod for culture at this point. Like, you own a DGod so that you can run around, talk about delays, and be in it for the culture only. I do feel, and I think there are a lot of DGods out there that are like just stoked to be a DGod and stoked to be in it for the culture. And I think there are a lot out there that are interested in a longer term view and not interested in like, securing their asset or making sure their bags are right. But for those people who are like confused about the delay, or like I guess, like, to put it short, if you are celebrating the delay, but you're also a little bit worried when your asset price goes down, like, your ETH is more valuable to you in other places while the delay is happening.
yeah, I mean, that being said, like, I'm still holding a really nice like zombie DGod because that's more of my
that being said, yeah, let me just promote my Grail real quick.
just because like like you can't weef bid like a rare trait like that. I mean, you can, but ultimately, like, I kind of have some NFTs that I'm holding long that I'm not worried about as much, and then I have some that are more for the purpose of swing trading, and so I kind of like reset my position, and that's where we're at now. And plus, dude, the thing is like reviewing NFTs apparently in this market is very dangerous. And we learned that from both Azuki and Memeland. And I want to take some time to talk about this Azuki elemental reveal. So
I think before we get in that FaXx, we kind of owe this to the listeners. We kind of have to lay this out. Like, at this point in time, at a huge catalytic cleaving event of the NFT market, like Good and FaXx are on different sides right now. Like we've never been at more odds in our takes, not odds as friends or anything, but we've never been at more odds in our takes than we are at this moment right now.
Yeah, that's true. And you know, I think history has proven that we tend to both be right in different ways at different times. And, you know, one of the things we talked about on one of the very early episodes of Never Fade was like this GMI versus NGMI game, gonna make it versus not gonna make it. And one of the projects we talked about was Azuki. And at that time, I said it was not gonna make it. You said it was gonna make it. And then like the following week, they like auctioned off like $5 million worth of golden skateboards. And it occurred to me like how wrong I was, that like this, you know, collection was absolutely going to make it because of like the, you know, the whale collectors involved, the way that those kind of actions of bringing out the big Ethereum stacks can really like leave an impact and impression on the market. And we did see Azuki run all the way up, slowly back up to like about 17 Ethereum, leading into this Las Vegas IRL event that they had, where they rented out Hakkasan nightclub. And by all accounts, it was like a fantastic event. You know, people who were there seemed to have an amazing time. People who were at home watching, I think, felt like missing out, you know, on what was going on. And all this led up to Zagabond, you know, doing his famous check your wallets at the middle of the party to cause excitement and hype. And I think he did do that. And I've been a big critic of Zagabond. I was like a Zunks NFT holder. You know, I did the reroll on the Zunks trade. I minted the Zunks pets. And then this collection kind of got abandoned. And it was later found out that basically Zagabond started this collection. He was like fucking around and finding out, and then kind of like moved on to the next one, and then moved on to the next one till he hit it big with Azuki. And then he's been sticking with that ever since. And I've been like a big time critic, you know, I've been a big time critic of Zagabond. And as this was all unfolding, like, you know, when they announced the mint mechanic, like my like sensibilities heightened, and I started to get like worried about what was going on because things were not shaping up. So essentially what they did is they dropped 10,000 elemental beans to Azuki holders, minus the ones that were caught up in these blend loans. Because if you're holding an Azuki with a blend loan, you don't actually hold that Azuki in your wallet. The blend wallet holds the Azuki. They did not drop those beans to the blend wallet. They left the possibility for people to pay up their loan and then go and claim the bean. But ultimately, about 10,000 got dropped to Azuki holders, and the other 10,000 were sold in this kind of like pre-mint phase 1 to Azuki holders, and then phase 2 to both beans and Azuki holders.
Before, just to interrupt a little bit, I do want to call the benefits of BendDAO versus the Blur lending protocols. You can actually flash claim when you're locked up in BendDAO. So actually a huge benefit for someone who holds a Bored API Club or a Mutant API Club. When airdrops are coming all the time, you actually can go claim while it's locked up in a BendDAO contract.
Oh, I didn't know that. That is pretty nice.
Pretty sexy.
Do you have any idea how they execute that? Like, how is that possible?
I did look into it. It's like on their website, it's called a flash claim. And essentially they set you up as a transfer to their wallet. So they authenticate with the wallet that you deposited, and then they kind of wrap an NFT that isn't your NFT back to your wallet so that they identify it as such. And then as long as you have that wrapped NFT, you can go in there and claim what got dropped, and then it will transfer out to you as authorized, which is phenomenal permissionless contract work, in my opinion.
Yeah, pretty interesting, because like, let me play out like a scenario for people who used Blend to take loans on Azuki, right? You know this party's coming up, the floor's at 16 ETH. You're like, hey, you know what? I have, you know, I'm gonna You put 3 ETH down. I'm going to take a loan of 13 ETH. And then when they announced this airdrop, what happened was that the floor of Azuki dropped all the way quickly down to 14 ETH because kind of like the value of that bean, elemental bean, came out. Well, suddenly now, if you had taken a 13 ETH loan on Blend, you're sitting on an asset now that just lost a couple of ETH of value, and you're thinking like, well, I want to claim the bean, I quote own the Azuki. Well, the only way you would have been able to do that is to pay off that other 13 Ethereum. And if you didn't have that, you pretty much would have just got liquidated, was what would have happened. The loan would have got called as the floor price went down. In fact, there was a newer lending protocol called Liquid NFTs that what happened is that their oracle, during the massive FUD of the Azuki drop, their oracle didn't update fast enough. So as it was dropping, somebody was able to basically loan 50 Azukis and get 9.6 ETH per Azuki as the floor was crashing down below that. And so now that protocol, Liquid NFTs, is sitting on 50 Azuki that, the loans are not going to be due for another about 3 weeks or 4 weeks, but still, like, they're upside down on those Azukis. And if the floor price stays below that level when those loans are due, those are probably going to get liquidated into the market. And that's like another example of how this happens. Like, the people holding the asset are upside down. They want to get as much of their capital back. They liquidate into the market, and just like the cycle continues. So going back though to this Azuki Elementals drop, the first thing that was weird was that there was a public Dutch auction scheduled for like the third phase of this drop. And people who had either an Azuki or a bean were going to be given the opportunity for 2 ETH to commit 2 ETH to get one of these elemental beans. But the price was going to be finalized based on how the public Dutch auction went. So like if the Dutch auction ended at a price of 1.5 ETH, those people who committed 2 ETH were going to get, half an ETH credited back. But it was pretty obvious to me, and I think a lot of people, that this public Dutch auction was never going to happen. And so the 2 ETH was going to basically be from holders, from the Azuki community, and not really from the public. And so what do you think about like the mint mechanic there?
Dude, I mean, all I can say is like when it smells funky, like don't eat the food, folks. Like this is insane funk that was coming from this. In this type of market, doing that public mint, even if the art, like we haven't even gotten to the rug, and it was a rug. It was a complete rug. But we haven't even got to like the unveiling of the rug. But just the presentation of this was whack. And the reason being is because their secondary collection, which was a bean, the beans, which we've said on this pod, or maybe we hadn't said it on the pod, but you and I have talked about, like, there was a point in March or April where like beans were the best play. And I agreed with you. That was your take. And I'm now remembering we didn't do this on the pod. This was just private combo. But I agreed with you on that take. And the reason why is because all it needed was an event like this to cement, beans as the middle child collection. But what they clearly did by pricing it 2 ETH when beans weren't 2 ETH is they clearly said this new collection is going to be valued higher than this secondary collection that y'all have been trading for years at this point. And that's messed up, man. Like, if Yuga Labs would not have been able to sell 2 ETH mutants in the height of a bull if Bored Ape Kennel Club wasn't above those levels. If Bored Ape Kennel Club was 1 ETH and they tried to sell mutants to the public for 2 ETH, Yuga would not be here today. They wouldn't. The mutant sale would not have happened.
Yeah, and they kind of like Azuki did reference Bored Ape Yacht Club, and they said these elementals are basically supposed to be like the mutant apes are to bored apes. And so that kind of puts
Which is your sign number 2. Which is sign number 2. When someone tries to run an old playbook on you, a playbook that happened in bull, and they try to run it back in the bear, even if the reveal is mind-blowing, even if the technology blows your socks off, and Azuki does have the chops to blow people's socks off. I actually, when everyone was talking about the gas war that they were gonna induce on the blockchain, I actually never said anything about it, but was waiting and thinking, like, if any team could come up with a way to defeat a gas war, this is the team. Like, I actually thought they were going to try to, like, create this hype of a gas war to be like, check out our mech. Like, our mech is now sellable to all other collections that can do these drops. Like, that's what I was expecting from the team. What we got was shit hacked together in the back of the Lambo, boy.
Well, like what happened was these elemental beans, they sold out fast, minutes into phase 2, all 10,000 that were for sale were sold at 2 ETH to holders of Azuki and beans. The other ones were already airdropped. And then everyone was kind of like waiting for this reveal. There was a lot of anticipation. And then what was revealed were essentially like these NFTs that used the same base model as Azuki and with new traits. And when people saw that, I mean, they lost it, dude. The amount of FUD that hit the timeline, everybody was so disappointed. I mean, people were getting emotional, and the NFT floor price of Azuki, it just started barreling downwards. It went all the way down to 5 ETH. Again, they were trading at 17 ETH before the party, going into the party in Vegas, and at the peak of max capitulation, they touched 5 ETH. That's a huge pullback for one of the, I think, most celebrated NFT collections in the ecosystem. And I think it set shockwaves around and made people kind of worry about, like, man, this can happen to my quote blue chip NFT. It can lose this much value so fast. And so
I think we had I think we had a great reset button hit on the blue chips. I actually don't think, I think this event, I mean, I was kind of questioning what was a blue chip prior to this bear market, but I think this event's very clear. Mutants are not a blue chips. Azukis are not blue chips. D-Gods are not blue chips. Like, Cool Cats for sure aren't. Doodles are not. Like, the only blue chip that's out there is some select art blocks and Bored Ape Yacht Club, period. And that's okay. We should have been there a long time ago. We should have been here a long time ago.
Yeah, I'd argue that the use of the term blue chip is probably not appropriate term for NFTs, but I do think, like, objectively, the way to characterize what a blue chip NFT is if you can get like a really solid loan on your NFT. Like, if you're like willing to lend your NFT and nobody's willing to give you anything for that collateral, it's definitely not a blue chip. But if you're like, hey, I got this mutant ape, and somebody's willing to give you 4 ETH as a loan when the floor price is 6 ETH, to me, I think that is an objective marker of blue chip. But now with all these lending protocols and stuff happening, it's starting to really like put that into question too. But this is where we start to kind of divert on our takes. I think we're kind of together on the opinions of everything leading up to this point, but now we start to like diverge on our takes here, and that's when it comes to this like actual art. So when you saw the Azuki elementals art, what did you think?
Low effort, embarrassing, like copy pasta. I mean, at least call the collection copy pasta. Like, make a meme out of it at that point. People might have forgotten that Zagabond once airdropped a wooden crate to his holders. And this wooden crate traded for enormous values of ETH in a bull run, and in a performative fashion, using blockchain as a canvas, he popped the crate open and left nothing but dirt. And people were mad, and he came out talking about the experience and the performance and the XP of it. And I was like, hey, that's a clean take. At the end of the day, he did drop something for free. People got a little out of hand trading on secondary, and he continued on with his plan. My point being is, if they would have revealed an anime-styled squiggle, if they would have done a hand drawing of Zagabond himself, and it all looks the same, like they could have gotten away with it. Something different, something new, something thought-provoking. This is like the lowest grade form of a mess up, is to have something look so duplicative.
And I think that was the general NFT community's instant reaction that saw Azuki getting pumped into blur bids and just floored, and people were super pissed off. But I'll tell you what, I spent some time.
FaXx, it was chaos.
Absolute
truly
chaos.
Nobody knew where to go. You're a Azuki holder, do you sell or do you buy? You're an Elemental Beans holder, do you reveal, do you sell? I've never seen people come in with a gut to buy a dip 60% off sale price, with the gut to hold it and then damp it when it falls another 40%. I've never seen that.
Yeah, you're right.
People coming in like savages that they can hold for a long time, and then they're out in 12 hours.
Yeah, people came in buying the dip at 10 and then capitulating at 8.5 and just losing that 8.5 in a day. So you're absolutely right. But it's when this kind of chaos and confusion and fog of war hits that sometimes there's the most opportunity, and so it had me perked up, because I was like, okay, what do you do here? What do you do in this spot? And I kind of figured that because most of the beans were put into the elemental beans were in the hands of this community of people who were flooring their Azukis and really, I think, upset, there would be continued capitulation into those beans. But ultimately, I thought that was an opportunity. So what I did is I spent the weekend watching that and sniping these elemental beans as they got closer to 1 ETH and a couple of these Azuki elementals that were revealed, below 1 ETH, expecting that at some point people would stop selling and there would be a rebound. And the reason was because when I look at this collection, the elemental Azukis, actually, there's some pretty cool little animals in there. There's kids, and there's 1,030 different trait combinations. So, in fact, I do think that they spent a lot of time on these traits. And I think that the thought process was, people love Azuki. We're creating an anime series around this IP. Let's go ahead and use the IP that people love. And I do think ultimately that will come around. And once the shock and the emotional process of this kind of simmers down a little bit, people are going to start digging into that collection more and being like, you know what, actually, I really like this art. And there is a lot of hidden gems in here. And you got to remember the days of just looking at NFTs and really getting obsessed with these different traits and the different things. I think that they're going to come back around. I'm now sitting on some elemental beans that I bought well under their mint price of 2 ETH, not financial advice, expecting that these will.
Also not hard to do. Not hard to do to buy it under its mint price.
It's under mint. It's under mint. So we've seen Azuki, we've seen Azuki get, absolutely berated in the past, fudded in the past. When Zagabond, came clean on the fact that he had been involved in these other projects in the past, he was pretending to be, different people online. That was a massive FUD, and they survived it, and they ended up really succeeding. And I think ultimately that's going to happen here, is that things are going to come around. I'm not sure if they're ever going to get back to their all-time high of 30 ETH. I'm not even sure if they're going to get back to their local top.
They won't because they didn't. They didn't when they had max hype after that announcement from Zagabond.
So it becomes more of a question of, are they going to get back to like, 15 ETH? I don't even know that. But what I do think is I think that they'll probably get back to 8 to 10 ETH. And if they do, these elemental beans at that point should be trading above mint. So for me, it seems like kind of like a straightforward play. And that's kind of like where I stand.
Yeah.
Does that change my personal opinions about, what Zagabond's track record is and all of this? Not really. But, we're playing the game of NFT trading out here too,
Yeah, and I think you could take your ETH and supply to BinDAO. It sounds like we're sponsored by BinDAO. BinDAO, hit us up. Like, we don't have sponsors, and we could take it. It sounds like we're sponsored by BinDAO. I'm a user of it, but the fact is like you could put your ETH to BinDAO and get 45% APR on your ETH and do way better than buying these elementals. I don't even care if they go down to like 0.3. Buying them at 0.3 to try to double at 0.6 is going to be tough. This thing, when Zagabond came out and he said who he was and all the things he did, like, I actually, half the market was confused why it was a bad thing. The other half wanted to just poke at him and bring down the collection. And I actually think, like, sometimes we hear it all the time between like hard rugging, soft rugging, things like that. Like in his prior, I am a Zunks holder. I still hold Zunks. Like, he did provide an experience for people that bought that product and re-rolled and did those things. I didn't really see that as that negative of a thing. I thought my interpretation at the time was that people on the TL were just finding something to chew on and trying to bring some relevance to their takes. Happens all the time. Then the bean thing with the crate, right? I thought that was pretty messed up that he let people trade for so much money, knowing that it was going to open a thing of dirt. But they had a plan with the beans, and he's talked about it being experience performance. So, I was like, I gave him a little bit of a slide on it. It actually made me a little bit more upset than like him talking about his past. But this one, man, like, if they had recovered to their all-time highs and actually even got close to retesting the 30 ETH, which they didn't, the closest they got was 18. I'd say maybe they could blow some air back into this. But I really do think for the people that were so diamond-handed, the crazy community that he had wrapped around his finger that was willing to buy at enormous prices anything he dropped, I think he abused them. And I think some of them left and most of them stayed on board. I don't think anything that gets pumped out of this collection is going to be the first NFT bull trap you've ever seen. Like the first NFT-based bull trap you've ever seen. Because it's going to ride up and people are going to see 12, 13 ETH or whatever. They're going to get a little excited. They're going to ape in and permanent loss recovered, boy, by the people that need it most, the people that got wrecked.
So let's run it back. Azuki, Goodmonth ETH, GMI or NGMI?
NGMI, dead as dirt. Old relic.
He's saying they're not going to make it. I'm changing my stance. I've seen enough to think that they are going to make it through this. Full disclosure, I'm holding some elemental beans and we'll be shipping those things once the juice is back into the collection and people are feeling euphoric again.
I just don't understand, man, because it's like I just have to challenge the take so hard because the announcement of this mint was so smelly. Like, it was so off. The way that the beans holders got bodied, the way that the narrative was that this is going to be to get more people in the community, but the reality is it was never going to go to public. It's trash. Now, if they have a good PR person, they can say, we needed to dilute our project. Diluting means diluting the value, bringing everything down so people can actually enter now. Like, okay, run the PR scam on that one for me. But other than that, like, everything about this is incredibly bogus. And I mean, all you got to do is hit the TL, say some positive things about Azuki, and you're going to get people that work internally on that team to DM you. And thank you so much for your service. And thank you for everything that you're doing, because they couldn't do it without you, and they see you as valuable.
Yeah, but like the counterpoint to this, right, is like if you were holding an Azuki, you know, you went to this like sick party, you met more people, your love of the garden was growing, Zagabond drops you a bean, nobody twisted your arm to go pay 2 ETH or max, you know, max mint your opportunity at 2 ETH a pop. People need to be accountable. That was a gamble. The reason people spent 2 ETH a pop on beans is because they thought they were going to run to 3 to 4 ETH within days. That's what I thought. That's what everybody in the community that had FOMO thought. They were gambling. They lost. They took a detour to 1 ETH. Everybody's going to cry about it. And guess what? They're going to move past this, and these things are going to come back up.
You're right. Look, they were gambling, but the table was built by someone else, dude. They came to a table to gamble, and the table was brought to them by Zaga Ziggy Boy himself, right there. Like, they walked in the casino. They paid the ante. Yes, you're 100% right. But that table was placed by a dude led by Zagabond. And the fact of the matter is people showed up, and here's the deal. When you gamble, when you're playing poker, there's winners around the table. When you're playing craps and you're only rolling sevens, after hitting numbers, the house collects. This was a rake. A complete rake. The garden is a house. The house took the cash. The house won.
They
and
did.
Look, dude, you can't even tell me. Like, I'm throwing this take right at you, and I can't even stomach to hear it. Because if people were buying at 2 ETH because they thought it was gonna go 3 to 4, fine, gambler, you got it, go for it. But to sell something at 2 ETH and to not even have a narrative to support it at 1 ETH within 12 hours. Means you set expectations wrong.
Yeah, there was a FOMO ramp, and the people who bought into the FOMO, they got burned, and you can blame the team for creating that much FOMO and, you know, putting their holders in this really like tough situation where they felt like, I better mint this because these guys have my best interests at heart. Now, I do think one of the failures here was lack of transparency and poor communication between the Azuki team and their community. And so we're going to pivot into the big contrast to that, which is like the max transparency in the ecosystem of Opepens. And
before we get there, I do just want to call out here that, like, I'm not going to mention him by name, and I hope he's doing well. I love this guy to death. But there was a person who left a really big collection for health reasons, and culture ran out the back door when that happened. Azuki seemed to step up and take the culture staff. They seemed to run with it. And I think that's what you're really getting bit by with this hackathon party. And I think that's what's fueling a lot of your hope for this return. And I don't think you're wrong with the fact that they could grab the culture staff again. But we also know that culture's legs of a collection can be wiped out from underneath it at any given point. I think Frank has an opportunity to take that culture staff on for DGods. Now, I'm not a DGod holder right now, but I think if Frank stops kidding himself with trying to ship things on a timely order, but just goes 100p the culture route, there is a podium that's empty for a collection to come in and win the culture battle. So that's what we're going to see play out. DGods, whatever's left of Azuki, and anyone else that wants to enter the space, because Yuga's into gaming. Yuga's culture's done. They're they won't grab the culture staff again. So whoever's going to run with that staff can have a huge value prop. It's going to make no sense to anybody, and it's going to run and melt faces because no one can really justify culture. You have to be in it. So I know you're full on Azuki. You think they're going to come back? I'm going to say it's Azuki versus D-Gods versus any other new up-and-comer that wants to take the culture staff, and I think advantage goes to D-Gods.
Yeah, and the problem with like culture having such a substantial impact on how the market sees these values of these NFTs is like, it kind of reminds me of like nightclubs in LA. Like these nightclubs pop up and they're like the hottest thing ever. And there's lines outside and celebrities are going and it's like the place to be. But suddenly it stops being that. And nobody's talking about it anymore. And nobody's like really hyped about it. And then they just like close up shop and they start a new club with a new name and a new vibe somewhere else. And to be frank, like we're kind of experiencing a little bit of that with the ebbs and flows of some of these collections. And it's kind of sad to see. And I think that's also why we're seeing a bit of a rotation to the art side of NFTs, because it's less about the vibes of the culture. And I think it's more about the appreciation of art, which I think in general we have evidence to believe that art can appreciate over time as it's aged, like fine wine. And so, like I want to bring us back to this topic of Opepens, right? So Jack Butcher, what he does is a transparency thread. He puts out what his thoughts are and what's about to happen with his NFT collections. He takes feedback. He takes like iterations. He's got an opt-in process where he can see how people are feeling about the sets that are released. And then he can iterate and take feedback. And so it's kind of like the complete opposite of this, like, total like mystery we're going to build in silence. And then we're going to surprise you. It's like you get a taste of what's coming. He sometimes takes that and iterates, and sometimes just, okay, it is what it is. But you spiked a set 007, which is like a really cool set. It was the finite Opepens set. What's your thought process on that particular set 007? What did you like about it?
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw it, I was kind of like, I looked at it literal. And so, I said this on the Twitter Spaces last Friday that, some of the best things that come from the art world are just extremely misinterpreted items that the mass takes literal, but the few that can hold understand the deeper meaning. So Warhol's, like, people laugh at Warhol's because there's, it's just the same image reproduced, and they don't, the holders understand that he's like memeing manufacturing. People will look at Jackson Pollock's and they'll say that their 6-year-old kid could do the same work that Pollock could, without understanding that, the story behind Pollock and getting his art, relevancy, and understanding that there's a whole kind of storyline that goes behind that art, as well with like Rothko's in any type of fine art, right? And so when I first saw this, I actually didn't see it in Jack's thread. I saw it in people's comments, and they didn't like it. And it was very clear to me that people were taking it extremely literal, and that they weren't kind of digging deeper into what it could be. So I took some time to myself to pull up the set 007 page on Opepens' website and just take it in, look at it, think about it, see how it could challenge my thought process, see if it could teach me anything new about the way I view things. That's really what I do when I look at art, is try to figure out how it can operate on me. And then I just quickly vibed with it when I came to the understanding that it is an X-ray of everything that gets printed out of this project. Like, you can't see rarity in anything that has been released to date. You actually can only see imagery, and then you have to rely on the metadata or rely on someone to tell you a narrative. And whenever I think about people relying on narrative for value, I think of that meme of that dude yelling into that lady's ear at a club where she just looks extremely bored.
Yeah.
And she's extremely bored. And, you know, the meme is just say the most confusing, complicated things that you know she doesn't care about. That's how I feel with anyone bringing narrative to any type of valuation. When people start talking about, I have this ape that's a double board, double zombie, double, I just am like, dude, you're so lost in the sauce. Like, you've said too many words. So, yeah, like, I really vibed with this being an X-ray, and I put my thought out there on the TL, and people bang the retweet, they bang the likes, they bang the comments, and it woke people up. And so I was like, yeah, this is a way of taking something literal, and this is a way of it at a higher level operating on you, giving you some value to put back on the TL, and having people resonate with it. That's super important.
Well, I really like it. I think it's the minimal style, the color scheme, like it resonates with me, and it really does kind of like speak to the mechanic of Opepen, and I just like it. And so look, you hit the Maryland, you hit the finite set. Congrats to you, man. You're having a nice little experience here, hitting on the single digits, which I think if you kind of zoom out for a little bit here, these single digits are, I think, all going to end up to be fairly distinct in the big picture. And that brings us to set 008, which is in contrast the infinity set, which all of the 80 in this set, regardless if it was a 1 of 1 edition, a 1 of 4, or a 1 of 40, they all visually look exactly the same. What I don't think people realize is that they're interactive. So when you go to the NFT, you click on it, it changes colors, and I guess you can like kind of infinitely just keep clicking and changing colors, which was kind of cool, which was new. But this idea of non-visual differences, all 80 being visually the same, what do you think Jack was trying to say with this statement here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a nod to the number 8, which when you flip it on its side 90 degrees, it represents the infinity sign. So I think that's the literal motivation and driver. I think what's also important and a little bit of a detour, but 005 was the VVR drop, which was timed with like the Apple announcement, where, you know, 08 is more of a nod to the number. So I think that it makes things that are based off events very interesting, because I think the VVR event made people think and maybe just want some dopamine. It made them think that like 007 was going to be for James Bond or something like that. And like 008 was going to be dropped on 4th of July. And I think the big deal is like, he's not going to do temporal events unless he feels like there's provenance to that temporal event. He wouldn't do the Apple VVR representation in 005 if he felt the VVR wasn't going to be earth-shattering, right? So, like, 005 is not going to have its relevance or its prominence in the collection until 10 years down the road, dude. Like, no one talked about how revolutionary the iPhone was until we were on like iPhone 5. So like, it's, you know, that's how I look at these things. So the fact that, you know, back to talking about 008 is looking at infinity, and you can judge the art whatever way you want to judge it, but what he's trying to communicate with these 80 Opepens is, how do you represent the concept of infinity? And that's his constraint. And then he has the constraints of the Opepen shapes. So he's working under 2 constraints. One constraint is demonstrate and broadcast a representation of infinity. And the second constraint is the shapes that Opepen has and the framework of that. So that's what he worked with. And if you don't like it, then you're putting too much weight on aesthetics, or you're not vibing with the concept of infinity. And that is, both of those is okay.
Yeah. And also, like timing wise, it's interesting, right? Because Azuki holders were like totally losing it that the art on the elementals was similar to the OG Genesis Azuki. And so here's Jack saying, oh, you want to see similar? How about the same? Like, reminder, you can check the Ethereum blockchain, you can check the metadata to see the difference between a Genesis and an elemental, or in this case, like a 1 of 1 and a 1 of 40. And so, like, I think we gotta call that out, dude. Like, at the end of the day, this stuff is on chain for a reason. This stuff has metadata for a reason. Like, it's not just what you see in the little picture on Twitter. You got to peel the layers back. And I kind of liked that statement and the timing of that statement too. So it resonated with me. And I kind of have go ahead.
It's very narrative based. So insert meme, dude yelling at woman in club. Look, it represents Azuki in the same, and that's why. Check the metadata. So it's very narrative based, but I think, like, you bring up a point that I want to call out, because I'm old and I don't have time for narratives, and there are a lot of Zoomers out there that do have time for narratives. And I think what you just made me realize, if I could take a free mental upgrade here, you made me realize that blockchain historians, archaeologists, art historians, whatever you want to call it, if you wanted to practice art history and you wanted to be at a prominent museum, you have to study, network, and get blessed with access and opportunity to be doing it at the Louvre, to be doing it at the Guggenheim, to be doing it at famous museums. This is the power of the blockchain. Someone can come in here and stand up a blockchain archaeological practice, experience, consultation. Like, I think you just kind of showed me a little bit of what the future in 10 years is going to be looking like, when millennials are trying to park their assets in some real hard, never fade assets.
Yeah, never fade, right? And it's kind of like speaks to the point of, the reality is anybody can copy the art and make another collection that looks exactly identical, which we actually saw happen with the RRBAYC set that went into court and became like a legal issue between Yuga and those dudes. So, but at the end of the day, it's like provenance. It's like you can check the chain to see which came first. And so, couple points on.
But I think like, just to that point, where no one is gonna check the chain. That, like, I think what I'm saying is, I agree with you. Like, the chain is there to be checked, but in the future, like, there's gonna be people who check the chain. Like, if you look at trading cards for sports cards and they use, PSA to grade them and send them back, like, we're probably missing that service, and we're probably not going to get that service for the next 5 years. But, people out there doing podcasts, doing content, capturing these stories is important for that.
Yeah. And like in the near term, it's like, I think it's everything is so like emotion driven. But like when you zoom out, like you need to go back to like objective things like what's on chain, and not how people are feeling that day, and whether they're scared or not. So the other thing too, like pieces of evidence that I think that this is going to end up to be a very important set in the collection is, like, one, the opt-in rate for this set was very, very high. And two, Jack stated that they max opted in visualize value Opepens, like the team max opted in for this set. And so I think that they think it's going to be one of the most important ones also. So I did pick one up on the secondary market. So I'm just like out here shilling my bags on this episode. So it is what it is.
Yeah, you are. You are. You're
And
just using my ears as priming the exit click,
I am.
boy.
I'm just
No,
just
I did not opt in. Mainly because I was sick of Twitter. So I was sick of the space last week. So I touched some grass. But I didn't opt in. I just didn't connect with it as much as I connected with 007. And I kind of, I had some feedback on the art, but I put some tweets out there about like consensus or bust. I just really believe in consensus. I really believe in the Opepens community. I'm jack shit to the community, like I'm one vote in the grand scheme of things. So it's really important that the community puts their votes forward and consensus wins out. Screw your opinions. Everyone's opinion. If you got a little opinion on the body being X or the head looking Y or the colors being Z, screw your opinion. Jack doesn't need your opinion. He doesn't need to turn a horse into a camel. Like, he needs you to opt in or stay out. That's what he needs. And he needs consensus to be true. And that's what he's getting.
fair enough. And just one more story on this topic. When Jack announced the release of set 008, he stood up a Twitter Spaces. And so I happened to be at home and I saw this. So I popped into the Twitter space. I was excited to hear and learn about set 008. So him and Jaleel were up there and he actually like invited me up. We've hosted Jack here on the Never Fade NFT podcast a couple of times. We've hosted some Twitter spaces together. And so I think he wanted me to help moderate that discussion, which of course I was happy to do, excited to do. But as soon as I popped up on that stage, I heard this scream from the other room and my wife was like freaking out. So I got my headphones in, I'm on mute. And there was a lizard in my house and she's like deathly afraid of these things. So she's like screaming, like basically like, fucking get this thing, So, dude,
she's like, get Shillin' Villain out of here, FaXx. Get Shillin' Villain out of here.
This menace,
the
lizard. So I'm like, these guys are talking, about this set and the way that Jack talks, and all this, and I can't listen because I'm running around the house trying to find this fucking lizard and battle this thing, and like basically I did, and like I rejoined the space, like totally out of it, like just in time to be like, oh, okay, great. So I have another question for you, Jack. So like behind the scenes, it was like high stress environment for me, but it didn't seem like it came across like that
panting.
way.
You're panting, asking Jack questions, holding the lizard tail that came off because you swung and missed, and you just pop in your mouth and eat one, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So it was like, I was like, man, I don't want to fucking blow this for him, So it ended up working out okay. And apparently people...
What were your big takes from the Twitter space?
To be honest, like I didn't understand like what was happening. So like I was learning about the set. I didn't even realize it was released.
There was something about that, right? Because I did step away from Twitter a little bit more. But it did get buried as well. Like the announcement was subtle here.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because it's like, okay, if you weren't there in the space, which I think like 250, 300 people were, like you would have potentially missed it, but it was recorded. And last time I checked, close to 3,000 people did listen back to the space. So, there's this criticism people have about like having a clear, reliable way to find out about what's going on with Opepens. And I know Jack's been, it's not necessarily his style. I think he likes to be like a little bit, this is kind of like the artist in Jack. Like he's like, he feels something. He feels like he wants to release a set. He's going to do it. He's going to pop up a space. I think it's interesting. It's his style. So I do kind of was worried that the timing of it was, it was presented this like potential for people to kind of like miss it, but then the opt-in rates said otherwise. So ultimately, I think people are tuned in enough to check in and see what's going on, even if it's kind of like a surprise like that. So, that was the story of 008. And dude, the pressure's on Jack to like kind of continue to come up with ideas. And like my main takeaway from that space was that like this is not about 200 profile picture sets. This is about 200 opportunities for Jack Butcher to make philosophical statements and to share ideas,
Yeah. There's a lot going on with the Opepen mechanisms, and I don't think it's operating on everybody as deeply as it probably should be. I think we're lucky as hell to have a front row seat at a mechanism like this going on during the bear. I think that I'm ready. I've been ready to shift a lot of my perspectives and focus in this space. And I couldn't be any more grateful for having Opepen right now to be watching this unfold. I think that the way that art can unfold on people and operate on them seems to be my theme of this show for me, is talking about like things operating on people. It's pretty powerful. And the reason why I got into digital art and digital collectibles, and I'm starting to resent the word NFTs like pretty hard, because there's just so much that's misconstrued about it. But it woke me up. I was in a corporate role, doing the corporate thing, becoming a corporate person that I didn't like. I didn't like who I was becoming. And I think it's very important for everyone to love who they're becoming. You might not love who you are, but you need to love who you're becoming. And looking at art online and being able to double click on the artist and learn more about the artist, it really meant something. And then being able to put it into a wallet that you controlled, it really meant something. And this was way before it was supposed to mean valuation. And so the fact that you can sell an Opepen above an unrevealed price is a miracle. And I don't mean that as like a discount to Jack and team, but if you're literally sitting on Opepens and you're not grateful as heck that your reveals can go for more money than your unreveals, and you're not like bewildered by that in this market, then you need to absolutely go touch some grass and check yourself, because this is freaking amazing, man. Like, it's absolutely stunning.
Yeah, we've never really seen anything quite like this, where the reveals are worth more than the unrevealed. It's always essentially the opposite. And that amazing point that you just made, I just shamelessly tweeted it from my account. You may not love who you are, but you need to love who you are becoming. That's a great take. I love to hear that. And good, man. I'll tell you who you're becoming. You're becoming one of the most sharp NFT traders in the game. I'm not going to dive too deep into it today, but you've been bobbing and weaving like an animal while building and doing so much else. So hat tip to you. But I wouldn't fade me either. That's probably not going to be healthy for your bags. We'll see. I do want to get to a couple of other topics before we wrap up here.
Look. We got I'm working on this one, so let me say thank you. Thank you for those kind words. But dude, you're an animal. You're an animal in your own right. But I think what's great about the duo between you and I is that we just operate so differently, and we operate on so many different timelines. And we care about different things. And so I love like I love being wrong to you. Like I really do. And I think that there's a lot of value in having these different takes. And I wish people could kind of get in on a phone call with us. Maybe we'll do one. Maybe we'll record an audio only phone call where we just stream it and somehow pretend like we don't know it's going out there in the open. But dude, we just fire off takes, and we had a tough call. Like not as friends, but you and I couldn't be any more opposite. Like you're standing down looking at my future moves like I'm an idiot. And I'm looking at your future moves like you're NGMI. And it's great. And I think everybody out there, don't make moves alone. You know, make moves with other people who can actually like see things differently, because those things in the back of your head, you know, it's good to check yourself on those items. But one thing I'm really big on right now is heavy metal, which is Yuga's second Jimmy the Monkey activation, born out of Dookie Dash. I think it's incredible. I think their execution on game 2 is incredible. They've been a company for 2 years. They've been a company that's scaling for probably a year and a half. And they're a gaming company, and they have gaming execs behind them, which really doesn't mean shit, except for those gaming execs have their gaming entourage that they're going to bring over and bring into Yuga and operate as a gaming company. So when Yuga smells like EA, when it smells like Riot Games, when it smells like Epic Games, don't be shocked. It's going to get there. But the thing that's going to be the core central nervous system that EA and Riot Games and Epic Games would need an incredible reorg and pivot into is making the central nervous system NFTs. And I'm not a gamer, but heavy metal has been an experience where I've got to, you know, intro my kid to gaming. He's 5, and have a connection with him. He's building his own forge. I'm watching him like learn the game. I'm watching him light up at aspects of the game. It's giving me a whole new lens. And I'm very happy that like heavy metal is getting a bit faded by some people who came in the space that are trading NFTs like fungible assets, because at the end of the day, this is totally different. And I think it says a little bit about where NFTs in the gaming world is going to go. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm a big fan. And I know FaXx isn't, so let's hear it.
So let's dig into that. That's interesting, Good, because I know you're not a gamer. I know you didn't spend like that much time playing Dookie Dash. But for some reason, you're bitten by the Forge experience. I know you're doing it. You mentioned doing it with your kids. I know our producer, Hazy B, he's forging. So like, what is it specifically about the Forge experience that makes you think that Yuga's on the right track here?
Yeah, well, let me start by saying I had, 7 sewer passes that I sold off for 7 ETH, so I got paid 49 ETH to come back in for 1 ETH to buy a heavy metal to game. So it's a little bit of a experience of being a pro gamer, I got paid to do the sport. But on top of that,
dude, those sewer passes, man, those things were trading for a lot, dude. And these heavy metals that they were essentially what those sewer passes revealed, like they are not trading for a lot. And so
I know, and I'm bullish on that, because if you think about it, there's so much friction to if you took a sewer pass to a heavy metal, you had to like play a game. You had to earn that heavy metal. You have to log back and you have to do these things. There's so many barriers of friction. I have a pretty firm belief that like once you get your heavy metal through the ranks, and it's always been out there. Evo 1, Evo 2, Evo 3. I think what's going to come out the other side of Evo 3 is going to attract a lot of people. And I think there's my bet, and this is not confirmed anywhere, but I think the Evo 3 is going to be the only playable character in a game. And I think any company that's making a game for a limited set of users is batshit. The way games work today is total economy of scale. You make the game, you sell the game far and wide, you get as many users hooked as possible, and this is different, and we've seen it. Dookie Dash, you had to have a sewer pass. The Forge, you have to have a heavy metal. If you think these markers and milestones of going through this is a waste of your time, I'm pretty confident you're going to wish you did. I'm pretty confident at the end of this, it's going to get to a point where like, damn, so you're telling me that I needed to just like log in and play 3 games and I wouldn't have to be feeling the need to pay this much money in secondary right now? You're telling me all I had to do was go in there and play games and I faded myself? Like, getting airdrops is harder. Like, I was fortunate to get one of the earliest airdrops, and in order to use that protocol to get that airdrop was risky and hard and confusing. It wasn't fun, but 12, 18 months later, I got hit with a bag at a perfect time to get hit with a bag. So if you're telling me money doesn't grow on trees in this space, I'd say you're wrong. And if you're telling me that people are asking you to play engaging games and money might possibly grow on trees for you, I'd say sign me up.
Yeah, Goodmonth. He's been shaking the money tree in his digital backyard here for a minute. Yeah, for me, like as a mutant holder, as a kennel club holder, I'm struggling with the reality a little bit that Yuga Labs now is a gaming company. You know, I was bitten by the lifestyle, you know, and culture narrative. Let's not forget, like Gaio Siri, like recruited half of Hollywood into this collection. Ape Fest had headline acts. Snoop Dogg and Eminem did a other side inspired music video on the Video Music Awards on MTV. Like, I feel like what happened, like a lot of that in the face, I'm assuming it's because of the SEC regulatory kind of moves and the investigation into Yuga, but a lot of that has really kind of quieted down, and now and I think that has affected like some of the floor price action of Mutant Apes and Bored Apes and Kennel Club, but like it's been a struggle for me because I didn't really get into this for the gaming. I do see what you're saying. I do see that, especially at these levels, it's pretty amazing. And the amount of time that they had to produce like a gaming experience like this, that's so engaging. It's super interesting. Like, what do you say to like the lifestyle and culture aspect of Bored Ape Yacht Club now?
I mean, I went to a party consensus that was just for, you know, Yuga, and it was lit, dude. It was fine. It was great. Like, we were at a bar. It was a day bar. It wasn't a club. The vibe was strong. Best party I'd been to a consensus, besides our own, of course. Nah, it was better than ours. It was great. I mean, you know, Orangey, who just bought a ape, he was there, assuming he owned a mutant at the time or whatever it was. And he's not 21, so he got kicked out.
Oh, he's under 21?
He was at the time, yeah.
Dude, well, but he's a professional gamer, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just saw he posted that he was all stoked. He's been wanting to get a Bored Ape. He got a Bored Ape. He was big on Dookie Dash. He's playing this game. So, like, is this the demographic now?
Yeah, dude. I mean, figure it out. Like, figure out the demographic. Like, I'm trying to figure it out too. Like, I don't know, man. Like, here's the deal. Well, here's one thing I can tell you. If you're forging right now and you're focused on forging, you're probably going to save some money because there's a lot of falling knives out there that are going to catch you. So go bury your head in a game for a while and come out nice, chipper smooth, and ready to spend some ETH elsewhere. But yeah, I mean, is it the vibe? I don't know. You know, there's a lot of people who left the club this week. They got liquidated. Old heads getting liquidated. New heads coming in. Gamers. I don't know, man. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if this forge is the future, or like how, if it's gonna have dividends or it's gonna get torn down. Like Garga put a tweet out there that it most likely is just gonna get torn down, and your character is gonna be a totem that adds these benefits and characters to it. I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing: I'm not sending my son to junior high and not making sure he's not strapped with the most badass gaming assets. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, pretty interesting takes, man. I do agree with the fact that you're better off grinding on some games than catching falling knives. So, hopefully I'm not leading anybody to slaughter here by suggesting, to look at these Azuki elemental beings. We'll see.
I would like to do something though, FaXx. I would like to do something for everyone that listens to the Never Fade podcast. Throw your Forge ID, your heavy metal ID into our YouTube comments or a pinned tweet that we're going to put up. And we got some heavy metals on our end, so we'll go cast some votes and see if we can kind of start a little bit of a Never Fade forging community there.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is this like social aspect with the voting and that kind of thing, which, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have time for it. That's why I just said what I said. So, like I got time for these podcasts, and I got time to give our listeners value. So if our listeners come through on a comment with their ID and I can give them votes with the energy that I'm collecting in the game, then hopefully that's more value.
All right, so it sounds like this is the inception of like a Never Fade Forge team, to some respect. So before we sign out today, I did want to wrap up a previous conversation we had on the podcast about the Apecoin Special Council election, which is completed. We saw Captain Trippy and Waabam get voted in to replace Alexis Ohanian and Yatsui. We didn't see Thread Guy, who kind of seemed like an early favorite, get voted in. It does leave the opportunity for Thread Guy to put in an AIP to provide some kind of like comms and marketing services for the DAO. And I think that we discussed on the podcast episode we did that maybe that was like a better fit anyways, because the people who are on the special council, they're kind of muzzled by NDAs and this kind of thing. But I will point out that we had Bored Ape G come on the show when he was campaigning for the special Apecoin council, and he ended up winning kind of like last minute. And then we hosted Waabam, who seemed like he was on the outside looking in until really the election got down to it in those final few days, where he ended up being the most highly voted. So we're 2 for 2 on the podcast here with Bored Ape G and Waabam. What do you make of that, Good?
I think we know how to pick winners.
It looks like it. Never Fade.
I mean, it's we're picking them, right? Like they're the ones who have the background. They're the ones who show up in the debates. They're the ones who work their butts off to get elected fairly. But yeah, we game recognizes game.
Yeah, it was another situation where it's like proof of work prevailed, meaning that somebody who had demonstrated a track record of grinding and putting in work for the DAO, it was like well documented how much Waabam had done up to this point in helping, transition from the Cartan group to the new administration and on all of these things and different AIPs. And so that he ended up prevailing. So I think we got to take that as a W in general. Where do you think that leaves like the Apecoin DAO at the moment?
I think they're in better hands than they could have been in. Losing Alexis and Yat it does matter because they have connections and they're big dogs in the space and they've been around for a long time. Waabam doesn't get to learn from them as much as Bored Ape G got to learn from them. So it's not. I'd like to see a little bit more. I'd like to see what we can't see anymore, right? Which is people with those backgrounds staying on a little bit longer, but it is what it is. Waabam can handle it, and Bored Ape G can handle it. And I think a lot of things is like, we are not putting the future of our DAO in these people's hands. It's in our hands. But these people are the stewards. These people are the guides. And so Waabam really brought in the fact of like, we are making sure, my number one priority is that we're not getting hit with a Wells notice. And if you pop your head up once in a while and look at what's going on in the regulatory environment, the fact that we haven't gotten a Wells notice yet, shocking.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting.
People who are spending Apecoin to forge and having so much fun and blowing their ape staking coins in this game, like, it's because we have people that are making sure that this thing doesn't get the ban hammer. And with that said, I will say, for everyone that's like holding on to Apecoin and thinking it's theirs forever, it's not. It could easily get the ban hammer. So pay attention to the DAO.
Yeah, and we are our team at Goodmonth Labs and Never Fade is putting up a proposal for voting very soon. So looking forward to talking more about that when it goes live, if it goes live, and definitely want to rally support around that when it's live. So TBD on that. Once it's any input on the state of the AIP proposal, is that something you want to touch on at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's in review right now. The whole idea is that, we have the capabilities with the team here to build a platform. The hard part about DAOs is that you can't be too vision oriented. Like, when you write an AIP, it has to be very succinct. It has to be very tactical. All ends have to meet. And because of that, you don't get a lot of opportunity to cast your vision, and it makes it difficult. So if you go in, when it's live, we'll talk a lot about it, but when you go in and read it, it's going to read very much like, Never Fade is going to use its platform to get people to go in to learn about AIPs and get paid in Apecoin to do so. And then eventually, engage them to vote. The real vision that extends outside of that description is that every single person out there in Web3 that's producing content can use this platform at a low cost to be able to use their influence to encourage people to stay up to date on AIPs and convert to votes. So maybe people shouldn't be influenced into a funnel to vote is what people kind of think about. But at the end of the day, democracy does require putting people in positions to create smaller groups that help digest initiatives for people to get engaged. Not many people, when voting in America, read the whole ballot. They don't read the whole pamphlet that gets sent to them. Some people just lean on trusted sources to kind of hear their takes, and then they lean that way. I think that we can find a balance in between. We don't need to get to a point where everybody needs to go understand an AIP end to end, but we do need representatives out there that are trusted, have a reputation of understanding things thoroughly, and can motivate people to go out and look at the bullet points that are important to make their own decision. We don't have a lot of that in America when it comes to voting. We can have a lot of that in the DAO. And I also think it will give people an opportunity to stand up a podcast and create content, to go do these things because they have an avenue of possibly, covering some operation costs and doing so. So that's we'll talk more about that as that comes.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I'm of the thought that, if you're spending time really producing meaningful content about NFTs, we probably should be talking a little bit about Apecoin, and that's going to help the whole ecosystem. So the more creators that are incentivized to drive some of their audience and some of the attention to what's going on with the AIP process, the better. That's the way I see it.
And even if they don't vote, like even if people don't actually go through the process of voting, like knowing that AIP, 2116 is XYZ, like it's got to be valuable, right? It's got to be a trigger in people's brains when they're like, oh, I heard about this once. I wonder how that's going. I wonder what the status is. Then you can go back and listen to the content that they're listening to get the number and go to it. Like people tend to try to make these small wins need to have such big results, but we're not even getting small wins right now.
Yeah. And one of the things that the new candidates mentioned is that they were going to prioritize standing up certain working groups, including the marketing and comms working group. And this looks to be something that would fall under the umbrella of a marketing and comms effort. So look out for more info on this. With that, that wraps up another episode of Never Fade, the NFT podcast. Thanks for joining us. Again, follow us on Twitter at NeverFadeNFT. Subscribe to our YouTube. Follow our producer at Hazel B. Jordan, our host, Goodmonth ETH, and myself at FaXx_ETH. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week.
Ciao.
That's a bad bet if the bags check less. About to burn back to back, flipping not cheap when that Jenny duh hits. That's the race to 250 in the world and you chose to sleep. That's a bad bet if you wake up checkless. No more people without bags yet they need status. Running head first with the VV check thirst. Never heard of a hearse, but they connecting the dots.